This may be the check for right now.
This might be it.
This may be the check for Fluffy.
Really?
Gracious alive, man, you got me.
This meeting here?
Could be, yeah.
You already
Okay.
know.
No, he's smiling. Look at him smiling.
We're on.
There's nothing but love for you guys. We're on the air. We're on the air. Okay, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order here, our Operations and Planning Committee meeting on May 21st. Is that right? Yeah, I guess so. How about that? Okay, we'll just go right into our public session. And I know we've got some folks here that'd like to put some things on record as far as anybody want to speak. Any of you guys want to say anything for the committee that we can put down in our minutes? Any spokesperson?
I guess so.
Just say your name and address and then,
Sure.
yeah.
Sure. Yeah, my name is David Fales. I reside at 728 Cross Creek Drive. We are a small contingent of representatives from Cross Creek, and we're here to really focus in on probably what you call your item 2A, which is the increase in the odor and also the number of complaints related to the odor that have occurred within the last several weeks within Cross Creek, and understand what perhaps some longer term activities may be made, either investigative or remediation to address those. And then on the second point, it's also then, if this becomes an ongoing conversation that we need to have, how do we best communicate? Because I think we've had a few start and stops with regards to the effectiveness of communicating with you and getting feedback.
Has that been on our side, or has it been, it's been on our side? Okay.
Yeah, people not getting a response from, I called and talked to somebody and they said, well, I've got somebody from Wood Duck on the other line, let me call you back. I never got a call, and I've had other people say.
And this was here at the facility?
Yeah.
Okay.
One thing probably too, I'll just, if I can interject just for a moment, it would be good because there's a limited staff at this facility.
Right.
And so if, if there could be a delegated voice, so to speak, that would come in, because we've dealt with issues throughout the system, throughout the county, and so be different neighborhoods, right? So it's not unique in that respect, and so the neighborhood, and Chris, you can speak to this, but they'll delegate a person to funnel information to, so they're not, so everybody, there's one voice, so to speak, and there's not someone here that is trying to solve the problem and communicate, and if, when trying to communicate to a number of people about the same thing, it'd make it simple for the operation guys here. Is that a fair enough way to put that?
It is, but it does, I guess in a way, it bothers me a little bit that if nobody communicated back with you, that does bother me, and I'll look into that because that should be the norm. And I know the only person that I mentioned before the meeting started, I spoke directly with one person, and it was on a Friday for a call that we had received that day, and it was the day our operations director was off, and I didn't want the gentleman to have to wait until Monday to get a call back. So that afternoon, when I got back into the office, because I was out up in Greenville that morning, I reached out to him and spoke to him and gave him the update, and he seemed satisfied and thanked me for it. And I believe that Kyle, who's the operations director, I was under the impression that he had spoken to everyone, and maybe he missed somebody, but I'll look into that. But it is.
Do you remember the name of anyone that you had, that you spoke to? Do you know who you might have spoken to?
No, I don't.
I wouldn't-
I know it was
okay.
a woman.
I would imagine it was probably Amanda up at
Yeah,
the front,
probably, yeah.
who was, because
She's overloaded.
yeah, we had,
Let us know how you do want us to communicate
Well,
effectively.
And L. Shadwick, I've got letters here from L. Shadwick. I'm sure you've seen them.
well, the thing with the letters, and I'll let you know this, the letters that we had gotten from Mr. Shadwick were never sent to us. They went to our attorney, Larry Brandt.
Oh yeah, they did, didn't they?
Yeah, so we didn't, the letters weren't sent directly to us.
They were sent to somebody who actually knows how to work on sewer.
Everybody does, Larry does.
And I don't, both those,
Did they get to you about
both those that you have, I can look at the date and time that I got them. Now, the one that the one he sent yesterday, I got to Mr.
Oh, yeah,
Brandt.
I've got that.
I got, they sent it to me, and I can tell you the time I got it, but none of them were sent to me directly. They were both sent to our attorney.
That's
And-
odd.
And
And he
Mr.
brought them
Brandt,
up during our last commissioner meeting too. He
Yeah.
talked about these letters, so.
So-
and Mr. Brandt also, the one yesterday, this one here,
That's April 2nd.
this was one that was, I think we discussed it at one of our board meetings. And then there was also like the notice that was sent out to the community, I guess on whether it was by an email or
Oh, yeah,
Facebook page
yeah.
or something
It was
like
an
that
email.
on how to contact us.
Yeah.
That was also sent to Mr. Brandt, and they let me know. Now whether I was informed at that time or what have you, I can't speak
Maybe
to
I'll let
if I
Phil
knew
know
about it
that
the same
perhaps
day
he
or
should
not.
direct it to you guys.
But the thing is, that's again the communication in it. I say it bothers me or the lack thereof because I want everybody that contacts us to feel like they're being heard and to know that they're being heard. And if one slipped through the cracks or a couple slipped through the cracks, I apologize and I'll look at that. I'm not going to bother Kyle while he's off today, but I'm going to check the records because each complaint we have, and that Thursday that we received those 17-ish complaints, we logged those as 17 separate complaints. And I had asked Amanda, I said, since these are all the same thing, let's just log them all as one complaint and just document in there who calls or notifies us under the one thing, because every one of them is
Yeah.
about the same.
The date that I called is on the back of one. I wrote it down on the back of one of those pages.
Okay, so I'm going to check on that and see. And
But I think what should be noted is the reason for the peak in the complaints was perhaps generated by the fact that, I don't mean to speak for Al, but others perhaps felt they weren't being heard, right? So while we can have a centralized point, people in Cross Creek, I feel like they either the issue wasn't being addressed or there wasn't communication coming back. So that's what caused the peak. So if we talk about an improved system of communication, we've got to include that circle back, right? How do you guys feed back to us? How do we feed back to you? Because apparently the feeling was the voices aren't being heard.
oh,
Smell was
believe
there.
me, we heard you. When we get 17, 20 complaints, we
Right,
hear it. But
right.
the other thing with that too, and we're just having, I guess, open discussion.
Yeah,
here.
sorry, we didn't mean to.
No, I'm happy to do it.
We're not saying
That's what we're here for.
The thing too, and I can say this, and I'll just kind of let you know how we view things. The very first thing I do when I pull in every morning is I look at the flag.
Sure.
Because, and the flag typically is blowing towards your direction.
East
For the most part.
to west, right?
So when I come in from your direction down Return Church Road, and there's some mornings where I can get a smell of the plant down in the valley where I cross the creek, and I typically know, well, that we may get some complaints today, and we may not. So I can kind of gear up, but believe you me, we have to work here too. We don't like smelling it any more than y'all do. So when there's a problem, it's with a wastewater plant, there's no quick fix. It's a steady, long process. So, and I'll go over what I think was the cause of it, but there's no way for us to know this for certain. But I do think, and y'all are aware, I'm assuming, that we had a line break out there that we repaired a couple of nights ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I do not think that the two things are,
correlate.
I think that it's coincidental. And I'll talk about that unless you want me to go ahead and discuss it.
You might as
Now.
well go ahead to,
Okay.
We won't stand on that formality, we'll just go ahead and address it while we're
Yeah,
sitting
so just jumping ahead to my discussion about the odor issues.
I checked it off anyway.
Okay. so we've got, back when we started getting those calls in early May, I think it was the first week of the month, that we hit the weekend prior to that, the Friday prior to that, we had received a call from an owner-operator of another treatment plant locally that they serve a truck stop. And somebody, from what I gather, somebody had dumped a cleaning solution down the toilet. They were doing maintenance at the facility. They dumped it down the toilet or the sink or what have you. And it ended up killing the treatment process. So when that happened, they were in a bind. So they had to essentially remove that product and restart their plant. So we helped, we volunteered to help them. So what they did is they trucked in, I don't know how many loads, using a tanker to mix in with our larger facility, our process, because we were able to handle it in small doses and it not affect our operation. And they took product from here, a living agent, if you will, to restart or reseed their treatment plant. So for several days, I don't know how many days it was, we had received this product. And on Wednesday, so the day before we started getting all the calls, I noticed a couple of the trucks, they drove out, they made delivery, and they got driven out the gate. And it wasn't long after that we got a smell, an awful smell inside the building. And I've got somebody here that may be able to attest to that. And I don't know if it was coming in through the door or the HVAC system or the floor drains or what, but that's not a common thing here at all. And it was a odor.
Was it a chemical odor?
No, it was
okay.
It was what I would describe as a treatment plant odor, but very strong.
Okay.
The typical treatment plant, if you walk through, it'll have, if it's operated correctly, it'll have kind of an earthy, mulchy type of a smell. This one was like that, but very, very strong, very strong. So I noticed that, and I guess I made a mental note in my head. Didn't think much more about it. Thought it may be kind of a one-off issue. Well, the same thing happened the following day, the day we received all of the complaints. And so I kind of put it together that it must be this product that we're taking in, this bad wastewater, if you will, that was the cause of it. So I contacted when I got in on Friday, I met with our operations director. Kyle was off that day. I met with him, and we just started at the beginning. What's changed here the last couple of weeks that may have made this happen? So we went through a list of everything we could think of, and we identified that there were 3 changes that were kind of special conditions, if you will, that we thought it could be. Item 1 was that receipt of the hauled waste from that truck stop treatment plant on the interstate. The second one was that we have solids, like dewatered solids, that we haul to the landfill, and they're stored on a concrete pad. And when you get up, you can look out the window and see where we store them. And those are typically gone by the end of the week. We have a hauler that we come in, load these, and they take them off to the landfill or several loads during the week. So we typically don't have anything stored down there over a weekend. So that was item 2. And then item 3 was that we had begun, I think, finally receiving some actual wastewater flow from the Welcome Center treatment plant through that Sewer South Phase 2 project. So we knew that there could be the potential of hydrogen sulfide and odor associated with that. So those are the 3 changes. Well, at the same time, too, if you can remember, we had a little bit unusual atmospheric conditions at that time where we had these real cool mornings that were in the mid to upper 40s, and then it was getting warm in the afternoon. So I contacted a meteorologist to ask them about it, and they told me what I kind of already knew, that it's a phenomenon called a temperature inversion, where in the mornings you have that odor that it'll stay in these lower lying areas. In the afternoon it kind of will rise up or burn off, if you will, and you won't notice it. So after going through all those things, Johnny, our operations director, and I felt it had to be item 1, because item 2, the storage of the solids on the pad, while I say that that is atypical, that it's there over a weekend, it's not unheard of. I mean, we that happens from time to time. We have that material stored out there, and usually when you walk, it can have a strong odor, but it typically is right there at the site. Like if you walk down there and walk by it, you may smell it there, but you won't smell it when you get, it's a distance away from it. We've kind of ruled out the cause being the wastewater from the southern part of the county, because it did not have hydrogen sulfide, the rotten egg odor. It did not have that. Again, it was a fresher wastewater smell, just very much concentrated. So with those 3 things, we kind of determined that that was what it was. And then I guess as time has gone on, now we're a couple of weeks removed from that, it seems to have been validated, because we received our last load around that same date, and we haven't had that type of issue here again. We've also had more consistent weather where the cool mornings have gone away, but we didn't get, we fielded some more phone calls about it, but when, and this is information I got from Kyle, is that the calls we received last week were from the previous week, or just the odor problems in general. Like you say that, I guess people are just tired of dealing with the odors and want to know what's being done about it, or what can be done about it. And it wasn't about a specific odor at that time that the caller was complaining last week. Then, come Monday morning, I guess it was Monday midday, a person was walking along the right of way of our force main and saw some water, I guess, for lack of a better term, kind of bubbling up, or permeating the surface.
Is this in the Cross Creek area?
It is. It's in the woods. It's not
Behind
in
number 5 where
Yeah,
Yeah, I've heard
it's
this of it.
so somebody noticed that and contacted us saying they thought that there was a line break or some kind of a spill. We went out there and verified that it was a break in that 18-inch ductile iron force main. And I was in Columbia that day, but I had Kyle Lindsay communicating with Mr. Shadwick and told him what was going on. I think Al went out there and took some, got some pictures later that day. And I think Al had asked some questions, and I think it's in this letter about the age of the pipe and that type of thing. And that pipe, from everything we can tell, it's original to the system, so it was put in the late 70s, 78, 79, when they built the system. And the history of that's the first break or leak that I'm aware of. I've been here over 8 years now, and that's the first one I'm aware of on that line. But just because the pipe is 45 years old doesn't mean it's at the end of its life by any means. But it is worth certainly looking at and continuing to document that. And again, we document the repairs that we make. But we cut a section of pipe out. We've got it, I think, if we haven't put it down there, because I want to take a look at it, the inside of it.
See if anything else would have caused
See
that.
if it is, but it was from what I gather, it was about a 3-foot, just kind of a crack on the bottom of the pipe. So I want to take a look at that and see. But that, historically, we've had breaks on other force mains here, and some of them, in my time here, we've had multiple breaks on, the Speeds Creek being one that we have breaks on a couple times a year. But that's the first one in that 8-year period. So that's why I think, that it's somewhat coincidental. I don't think that leak was occurring when the odor calls were coming in. And on 2 occasions, we had people our staff ride out and look at the easement. So the day that I got the call, one of our collection system technicians. He drove our ATV out there. They noticed no leak, but they could smell the odor from the plant. Noticed no leak. Well, when I came in that Friday, when Kyle was out of the office, and I spoke to the gentleman that called me, I sent them out there again that afternoon. That afternoon, noticed no leak and noticed no smell at all. That was what was reported back to me. And then, that was, I can't remember the exact date of that, but it was the Friday of,
Yeah, so
well, I can tell you the
let
date
me
of
try
it.
to confirm a couple dates.
The 9th, it was the 9th
Okay.
that happened.
So the break was identified on Monday the 5th.
No, so the break happened this Monday.
Okay, break was identified, okay, on the 19th. Okay,
Yes, so the break was identified to us on the 19th. That was when it was called in to us. But we had that Friday afternoon, I had sent that technician out, inspected the force main. He reported back to me at 3 o'clock that he checked it and there's no evidence of a current or past wastewater spill, nor was there any odor detected along our easement. But he did say that he checked the same area earlier in the week, and there was an odor at that time, but no spill that he had seen then.
So that break in that pipe has already been repaired.
It was repaired that day, so they got it buttoned up
Was it about
Right.
midnight or
close
something?
to midnight
Mhm.
Monday night,
How deep was it, you remember?
7 feet
He
deep.
says, yeah,
And, we had the spill was about, we estimate it was about, I think it was 145,000 gallons is what we calculate. And we were able to manage that by holding flow at the Martin Creek pump station. We did pump and haul operations, where we would, essentially recover the flow that was
what
spilled
we've done in the
and
past.
bring it, to the treatment plant.
Is
and
that where
dump
you
it.
got Greenstone to help you out there?
We got Greenstone to help us out. We were doing it for a while till our truck blew a tire, and then we kept Amy Tao. You'll hear me mention her several times. She's our local Department of Environmental Services representative. We kept her in the loop. When it got to the point where we just weren't able to keep up with that operation, we told her what was going on. We estimated that we recovered from the site about 50,000 gallons or so that we trucked over here and disposed of, and it went through the treatment process. But that around 145,000 gallons we were not able to recover, so we issued that an advisory of the creek and the public notice that, and people want to know, why'd you do it? Because I think there was a comment about it. Why'd you wait till after the fact to do it? Well, one, we didn't know exactly how much of the spill that there was going to be. And two, with it being midnight before the repair was made, it was all sent out yesterday anyways. And I know it was picked up by local media. I know it was at least on the radio, and I know it was on Channel 7. So we're continuing to monitor the creek. We're pulling samples from the creek, and when the samples in the area that were affected, downstream of the break, they kind of mirror the samples of that upstream that wouldn't have been impacted. The advisory will stay in place until those, we kind of call it ambient, those come back to that ambient level.
but sorry, go ahead.
The advisory, you just mentioned it.
Mhm.
Where do I look to see the advisory? I mean, what is the advisory? I mean, I hadn't seen anything in the papers. I hadn't seen anything, I got a note from Kyle. Kyle's been great,
Mhm.
absolutely fantastic in communicating with me via text.
Mhm.
But, you mentioned an advisory. I hadn't seen anything.
Well, we issued the advisory. We sent it out. We have a guy that sends that out to the media. We sent it out, and I can get a list of who all it was sent to, but as far as whether they decide to publish it or advertise it or not, it's beyond our ability to control.
That was the one that just came out, right?
Yes, we posted it on our social media, which
Got
is
it.
the only media that we do have absolute control over as to what can get out there. Now, whether Channel 4 or the paper or anybody else decides to pick it up and go with it, that's their decision to make. You know, all we can do is send out a press release, and I've got a copy of that I can hand to you, what was sent out to them. I've got an extra copy printed on my desk that I'll give to you.
And I'd like to add, that's a requirement of the DES, Department of
That's what I-
Environmental Services.
That's what I understand.
We have to put that out, whether the paper,
And we've got
WGOG, that's.
and we've got a sign. You know, we've got a couple of signs in the general area, and we still have cleanup to do. So we backfilled the hole, but there's still just some general cleanup that we have to do. We'll spread some lime on the impacted area, which neutralizes the odor, and will kill off the bacteria for the area that was spilled, which is standard protocol and approved by DES. But we've had a rough year with Cross Creek, with stuff that's happened there, be it with the overflow that happened on Valentine's Day, or the odor issues that we have, that we've had, that we acknowledge that we had. Like I said, we smelt it here, and that then we had this line break. But we don't want to be bad neighbors at all, and when it comes to the odor, we don't want to smell it any more than anybody else does working here. So
But all that said, we kind of started this journey, and thank you for sharing that, by the way.
Mhm.
I mean, that you really didn't believe the line break was associated to the cause of the recent increase in the odors. You believed it was more the receipt of this other, can I call it contaminated waste? I'm not sure what the term is. That was brought in. It's kind of your working hypothesis.
Yes, sir. I think that's correct. That's the best that we can figure out.
Yeah.
And it's just what's changed, because again,
I understand.
as I said, earlier, a treatment plant, you can't turn a dial and change everything right away. Whether you increase a chemical feed or whatever, it's like we're like a ship that if something changes, the way you have to counter that is a long process. It's not a sharp right-hand turn or a 180-degree turn on the dime. So that's why we go back. What has changed here in the last 2 or 3 weeks? Has it been, you go through the thought of, is it something that an industry could have dumped on us? Is it something that somebody could have opened a manhole and dumped down the sewer system illegally?
Sure.
And we kind of rule that out because there's no way to really know that. But the items that we do know were those 3 that I mentioned. And that one being the receipt of that, and just the observation that we had that odor here pretty, nearly immediately after they had offloaded their trucks here. After it happened one time, there's some saying about, something happens once and then something happens twice. Well, after I noticed it the second time, I was like, maybe that's the source. So they actually had called yesterday and asked if they could bring more product here. I think 15,000 additional gallons. And I told them no. I told them that they operate treatment plants elsewhere, and I asked if they could take it to their plant. We did it to be good neighbors to them, to help out a fellow utility, but when, again, with no absolute hard evidence that was the case, but that being our biggest assumption, we just said.
When did that get brought in?
It was brought in, it started, didn't that start on a Friday, Lynn? Does that sound correct? The week before? Remember Amanda had people waiting at the door on a Monday and she didn't know why they were here. Does that sound right?
That sounds, yeah.
So with all the calls coming in the 8th and 9th, them hauling that material to us, I think started either maybe the 2nd or 3rd of May.
Okay.
So, and we'd received loads kind of steadily throughout that week.
Now, I was informed that one of the haulers didn't show up to haul the biosolids off.
That's yes, sir. So if you look,
So, I mean, just hold on 1 second,
Mhm.
Scott. I mean, I understand that, and that was on, like, I think Kyle said they didn't show up on the 2nd or the 3rd. The second's a Friday, the 3rd's a Sunday, a Saturday. And then we had some more discussion later on in the week. He even sent a crew out to my house and said they couldn't stand the odor in front of my house.
Mhm.
And then he sent me a text and said, well, we still haven't gotten rid of the biosolids on the pad yet, but we're gonna start spreading lime on it. My question is, why didn't we start spreading lime on it when the man didn't show up to haul it off to start with?
well, as I said, you know,
I mean,
mentioned-
lime's not expensive.
right. But as I mentioned earlier, typically, you know, and again, that's not while the solids are hauled off most, you know, in full most every week. It's not, you know, there's gonna be several times during the year, and when I say several, it might be, I don't know, 8 or 10 times where we have that, they have that product on the pad that they weren't able to pick it up because of weather or weren't able to pick it up for whatever reason, a truck broke down. So, and again, usually that odor associated with those solids, and if you look out the window, there's a pad that's directly this way where we store that material. And you'll have the smell with it, but usually that smell is generally right in that general vicinity. It's
Yeah, you have
not
to walk
emanating
really close to
across
it.
our whole site that you have that. So why we don't spread lime on it is because of that. Typically, it's only affecting that general area. You're not going to have, it's not going to be the source of broad odors that affect even this entire area. And, you know, for the most part, you know, I say again, the prevailing wind is this way typically, but it's not always. But, you know, I'll say, you know, you can ask other staff here, typically, you know, this facility, it might have just that general earthy type smell, but it's very rare that it has any type of a super strong offensive odor. When that happens, when we have that, it's an issue with either something going on with the process, one of the mixers may be out, or we had received a product or wastewater that was an unusual. From time to time, we may have that with an industry that may change their process or quit discharging or start discharging something that we weren't expecting to, and then we have to kind of change our process on a reactive basis. But really, I don't think the solids would have been the issue. That's me personally and discussing it with them. But we have, since that happened, we have started mixing in some lime when we did have to have that because of that. But again, we don't think that would have been the cause of what you...
And new equipment's coming next year.
Well, we have budgeted new equipment for processing,
Yeah.
but you know, that's...
Again, working, and again, Kyle's been super.
Yeah, you're talking about the press.
Yeah, we're talking about the screw presses and...
Screw presses, yeah.
But we'll still, you know, it's still gonna generate the solids, it's gonna have less water in it, when we store it, but
But that should mean less smell, right, Chris?
we hope that it's gonna be less
That's what I'm thinking,
smell.
because if you lose your
Well,
moisture, you're gonna lose your smell most of the time.
Well,
Yeah.
and I have a question. Is Cross Creek the only one that has called and complained? Which leads me to question, is there something in Cross Creek as opposed to here?
Well, I think, and I'll have to go back and look and see, the only complaints that I'm aware of have been from Cross Creek. You know, the Cross Creek is easily, well, I take that, I'm wrong about that. We have received a complaint or two, I think, from the Chris Drive
Chris
area?
Lane.
Chris Lane up the hill that was
Okay.
outside of Cross Creek.
Might as well be Cross Creek.
Yeah,
But all of the complaints have been from right here, unless I may be mistaken, because again, I don't look at the
Okay.
whole list of all the ones that we had received. But, you know, Mr. Shadwick sent out that notice on how to contact us. So, you know, the people, you know, they did know how to reach out to us, so we did get most of those calls from that area, as far as I'm aware.
Could you help me understand why
I know that we're talking about the immediate problem, but apparently from what she said with letters from Chadwick, it's been going on for 30 some odd years off and on. So do we have to go back to the root of the problem and figure out what we can do to, because if that's the case, it's only gonna get worse until it's really fixed.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think the root of the problem, if you boil it right down to it, is what we do. We are a wastewater treatment plant. The wastewater is the root of the problem. But, you know, as far as what the fix is, you know, what I guess I need to do is I need to go and look at kind of the history of the complaints that we have. As best as I can kind of put together, thinking of patterns and trends, if you will, the complaints we typically receive and the odors that I typically notice around here are on those, you know, spring and fall days. We don't have much in the way of odors during the wintertime, and we don't have very much that I'm aware of in the summertime. It's on those cool mornings and warmer afternoons.
I smelled it like 10 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm. And we have, you know, there's times, I think it was either last summer or the summer before, that we had received some complaints during the summertime. And at that time, I don't know that we had the type of equipment to go out there and collect data to determine, you know, because we go out there at night and there wouldn't be any odor out there. So we went and we bought some sensitive, they're called odor loggers or hydrogen sulfide meters that we can hang above ground and collect data over, you know, in a week's time and go and download it to see what may be going on. But as far as it being something inside Cross Creek, it's possible, but I can't really speak
Because
to
we've had a lot of
that.
building and a lot of growth.
Right. I remember about 3 years ago, when we were having issues with our drainage at our house, I went down and talked to the maintenance, head of the maintenance, and he says,
At Cross
Yeah.
Creek.
yeah, at Cross Creek, and he said, we don't have time, we've got a serious problem here. And this was down by the bridge,
Mm-hmm.
which is fairly close to Dry Creek, but and they were digging up pipe and so forth, trying to figure out what was going on. So perhaps if there's a correlation there, if you contact them and maybe they have some information that you guys can put together and figure out what's going on.
Well, we do, you know, we get calls, you know, Al or Jack Chadwick will contact us, and they reached out to us not all that long ago, and I think they reached out to the city of Seneca as well, because they felt that there was a tree that was falling in the creek that was causing it to divert the flow that could potentially wash out either their sewer line or ours. So we went out and looked at it. You know, if it wasn't the same day that we got the call, it would have been the next day. And we observed the tree. We saw what he was, you know, contacting us about, but there was nothing that we could do with it because it was not impacting anything within our dedicated easement. So we have a 30-foot easement, 15 feet on either side of the pipe that we could be responsible for. So if we notice that a creek does start encroaching into that 15 foot, at that time we can do something about it. But if it's outside of that, we don't have any legal means to be able to, you know, we can't maintain property that's outside of our area of purview that is documented in those easements. So in that case, there wasn't anything that we could do. I think we kind of kicked it back to Seneca to see if it might have been possibly impacting their side, because they had a pipe on the other side of the creek from us, and that, you know, I don't know what the result was with that, but we, you know, when we get a call, we do look at every one of them to see, and that's been, I guess, within the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
that we
you probably
did.
got a lot.
Yeah.
Well, we don't mean to take up a lot of your time, and I know you've got other things to discuss.
Well, if I may, lastly, it would be helpful to us if there could be, a point person or a few point people that could be the primary contact to disseminate information to us and us to get it out through that channel. And then also,
My goodness.
I know when I retired, I turned in my computer. I don't
So you know who did the thing? Oh, okay.
You're starting to motivate me now.
That was definitely spurred the city.
Well, hold on. Let me make a suggestion here, is that, let's do this, if we can, if we just have a couple things on our agenda, and I've got other things I've gotta get to, so if we could just hit the pause button.
let me say one more thing. How about this? How about one day maybe we get a group of people together here, maybe feed you lunch, and then we give you a tour of the plant, and y'all can bombard us with every question you want to ask. We'll show you the process. We'll show you where we have issues, that we know we have issues, and we'll let y'all go through and kind of learn how we work and what does cause odors, and would
I'm
that
not
be
sure we'll
something?
get that much participation, because we put this out on Facebook, and look at
Right.
what we got here.
This is a really good tour. I mean, it's worth taking.
It's worth
this.
taking. It really
Yeah.
is.
Well, just know that that's always available. I mean,
Let me propose this with regards to a spokesperson. Jack and Al have the greatest potential financial loss and risk from continuous odor and those types of things, as he's outlined. I don't mind actually, being some part of a conduit, but I want to have a conversation with Al to be sure that he's aligned with what we kind of want to do.
Sure.
And, right, so I'll take that action item to, at least reach out to Al and have some conversation about how he feels we should have that communication conduit running. And then the other thing that I'm just asked for your consideration is maybe temporarily, let's, if you have some of the odor sniffers or whatever, maybe put a few more of them in that downwind position to where you've got some information,
David?
data that can inform, the Cross Creekers, as we call ourselves, about what you're sensing. And I don't know, I put it to your consideration. I don't know what it costs to do that or anything else. And we'll take some of the information we've learned here about the short term and the break, back to them, and I'll share with these guys over recap.
all right, if you would, that'd be great. I'm gonna give you a card. Just send me an email too. That way I'll have your information.
Sure.
And let's stay in contact again. I'd love to see y'all come out here sometime.
Yeah, and we can offer that up.
And thanks for your participation too. We
Yeah,
appreciate
we
you folks
appreciate
coming
your
in.
time.
Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
Chris's background, he's worked for, large wastewater facilities here in the state. And he's also, state cut his teeth in his earlier career with the state regulatory, with the DHEC.
Kyle as well.
Kyle as well.
Yeah.
So,
And I think too, let's get communication clear, because it also feels like Seneca has a role, right? There's so many people that are kind of
Pieces of
influenced
pie.
and touching this,
Right.
right? That depending upon the scope of the issue would need to be informed. So
Right.
the attorney, thinks yourself.
Right.
yeah, Larry was good, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Just send it to Larry, he'll take care of it.
Great.
Okay, well, we appreciate.
Yes, thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the
Yes, it did, it did. And thank you for hearing us out.
I've got everything answered. I would like to take a tour of the facility. I mean,
Well worth your time, I promise
I
you.
used to have a small one up at the nuclear plant before y'all ran the line out there, and we greatly appreciated it when you did, so I could shut that sucker down.
We can coordinate something through Facebook.
How long did you know Dana Moore?
Let's see, I used to live next to Dana.
Is that why you moved?
My wife went to high school with him and grade school with him.
Right.
And
That's the
Dana
answer.
and I are good friends,
Yeah.
still.
Yeah.
Even though he's on the council, and I don't approve of a lot.
Right.
All right, well, thank you
Thank you so much.
Anytime.
With regards to
Thank you.
we have an easy way to communicate broadly.
Yeah. You know, and Elle is on that Facebook page too.
Thank y'all for,
Thank you for
Thank you,
coming out.
guys. Y'all have a great
Thank you so
day.
much.
Tell Kyle I
Nice
really
meeting
appreciate
you.
it.
I will. I certainly will.
He's going
Nice
that
to
way.
meet
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Yes,
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you. See you, David.
See you,
Bye-bye.
Kathy.
You guys want to open or close?
Leave it open.
This thing is fine. Thank you, sir. All right, Bob,
Thank you, Bob.
with the second gear now.
Let's do it. Update on current projects. Okay, good. Thank you, Chris.
They're moving along well. We're all, no issues to point out. Everything's going well with that.
All right, very good. And again, we have reference to our sheet there.
Yeah, I looked it over,
All right, good. No.
So, a little sidebar there, you know, Lynn sends out the email, or Amanda, and, you know, it's the agenda, and I always try to bring the agenda. About the time yesterday, I was printing the one page one, I print the agenda, and my wife got my attention, and I hit print, and it started printing all 22 pages. I said, whoa.
Hey, Dave, guilty as charged. I've done that before, but only once. Oh my gosh. All right, good. Well, general review and discussion of the budget. Okay, is there anything that needs to point out there?
I looked it over. It looks good to me. I guess we're gonna have to see what the finance folks have to say about it, you know, and we'll go from there, but it looks okay to me.
Anything to be aware of, Chris?
I don't, the only thing that I think I want to point out to you here is, I guess a couple things. As far as anticipated revenues, and we got a financial guy that's sitting at the end of the table now with Josh. Welcome. There's a footnote on page 2, footnote 4, that talks about how we, I talked about conservatively projected, and it may be outside of this discussion here, and it may be a conversation that I have with Josh or somebody else, but the way that we determine how we, what we anticipate for rates that we receive is I take the average for the last 12 months, starting in March,
Right.
for the customers to determine base flow, and then the volume over that 12 months, that monthly average, and figure out, use that to determine the volumetric flow. Well, we actually assume there's going to be a very slight reduction from year to year because of aging meters that are going to be under reading, or you're going to have businesses that may close, or you're going to have active or passive water conservation measures that take place. People replace toilets with a low flow toilet or what have you. So when I say that it's conservative, it is a very slight drop, and I say slight because it's a fraction of a percentage that we use as rates. So I actually truly anticipate that those may come in a little higher, especially as new customers get added on. So again, this is kind of a worst case scenario, I would think, with the revenues that we will receive from the user fees. But as far as expenses go, that, especially in the operating budget, one thing I think we're in, it's not unique to us. I think it's every one of us that's sitting around this table today, plus, Westminster as well, and every utility. We're gonna have to figure something out with how to keep staff. We had, over the last year, 7 operational staff, and when I say that, I'm talking about from all 3 operational departments: treatment, the collection system, construction crew, if you will, and maintenance have had turnover.
What do you
And we've
see-
had people start here to fill a position and then leave that exact same position. So
What do you see as the driving force behind that? What do you see?
money.
There you go.
We've got
Always
people
is.
leaving, drive to Greenville. We've had people leave us to go work, I think, for the county.
Drive all the way to Greenville.
I know.
For
Does that not tell you
$7
something
more
about
an
that?
hour to do the
This is what
exact
I've been
same
telling
job. To do the exact same job, not a promotion. To do the exact same job, they'll drive.
What do you
we
normally
were bringing
see?
people here from Rewa. Now Rewa's taking them back. Even some of the same employees that we hired here from Rewa that live locally. We have a guy that lives just down the street,
And
can
he's
walk here
driving to
almost.
Greenville.
Left to go to Greenville for I think $6 or $7 more an hour.
And that's when gas was like $5
That's right.
a gallon.
That's right,
So,
that's right.
so that is our biggest issue, as it is, I would imagine, with everybody around this table. So, for those that are new here, we don't operate on a cost of living basis. We have a merit-only system where, you basically performance pay, if you will. We do annual evaluations, and, we'll have a little pot of money that we, and it's baked into the budget request this year. We'll have a little pool of money, and based on evaluations, you may get part of that, and you may not get any, and you may get a little more than somebody else. So, because, this goes back to what was recommended and approved by the board back in 2019 to have that system. And then every few years, there's a reassessment. And y'all may be able to remember when Kerry came in a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and did the comp study. And that's when you capture in the cost of living and the market adjustments that take place in these fields. So what was decided back several years ago, proposed, and it's not, there's no requirement to do it, and that, the board didn't ever pass a resolution saying we're going to do it, but that every 3 to 4 years that we would revisit those, it's typically about $5,000, give or take, to reevaluate, to update that compensation study. So next year we're going to be at the 3rd year. So 3 to 4 years, we're right at the beginning of it. So I would like to have that done, but with that being said, it may make recommendations for the following year, fiscal year 27, as far as.
So where are we at with our staff right now? Where are we go? Are we full? Are we lacking?
We still have.
How many positions we need to fill right now?
There's one operator position and one maintenance position, correct, Lynn?
That's big. That's big for a place like this.
And the thing with the operators, y'all know that with a treatment plant, if you hire somebody brand new, and we did, we hired somebody brand new, brought them in as a trainee. It's 4 years until they can get to the proper license that the state and federal government requires us to operate.
What can we do? Is there anything we can do as far as on the state level to try to get these folks to back that off of us a little bit, so we could try to get some operators in here? Because I'm finding and I can't find operators. All the old folks are turning out.
It's not. I don't think there's anything we could do there. I think the biggest thing we have is, and this is being worked on actively. I'm a member of an organization that is actively working on this exact same process. But one of the biggest things we see is the exams, because you're required, you know this.
Sure.
And the fail rates for some of these exams, they say that you have more people that are failing the wastewater examinations, that are failing the bar exam and the CPA exams percentage-wise. So there's trying to rework that to where they're asking relevant questions to what we actually do instead of these obscure.
Well, that's always been a problem.
So that, I think, and I just heard this last week, I think that there's a new exam going in place later this year, maybe as soon as July. But it is going in place, and from the feedback that has been provided to us, it is an improvement on it. But it still doesn't expedite that time of the 4 years for a newbie. So we can bring in a newbie, one.
So what kind of training platform do we have in place right now? What do we have in place?
We'll send them to school. There's, they have schools, whether it's rural water.
So we're proactively
we are
into it.
Kyle was a trainer. That's one of the things he did. And Kyle worked with anybody. We'll do whatever we need to do.
There's online work.
Yeah, we'll send them to school. We'll
Yeah.
do whatever we have to do. That's training's built into the budget to do. But
We've had situations where you train them up, and then 4 years later, now someone's going to pay them $10 more.
Yeah, that's what happens.
That's
That's exactly what's
I know
happening.
we've talked about doing clawbacks, where if we pay for all your training, get you trained up, then you're gonna you got to work for a certain amount of years after that.
We do that.
You do have that.
It's for certain things, like with a CDL, because we haven't had this problem before with operators, and we haven't, the operators that we have leaving us already have, the last two that have left us were A licensed operators when we hired them on. So we haven't had the problem with the, training them to go somewhere else.
Okay.
But we do that with the CDL, so we have an agreement, our attorney wrote, what's it called, Lynn? It's
Yeah, I remember us discussing.
yeah,
that.
so we've implemented that. We've used that to where we sent somebody to CDL school and they have to work, they sign saying they work here for 2 years, and if they leave prior to that time, then.
How are we doing on that right now? We
They leave anyway and pay it back.
We've had one that did
we had
that.
one leave and
It
they
was
had to pay back the fee. They even did that.
It was
Well,
a time,
that-
and I'll
that's what I
share,
was in
I'll
law
send that
enforcement, they did that,
agreement
sure.
to you, Josh.
It's good.
I'll send that to, remind me if you don't get it later today. I'll email you the agreement that we
But
have.
it all stems from this budget. I mean,
But-
it's gotta be.
But I think, I thought for a long time, when I started here, that was one of the safety was the biggest concern I had. The second was the compensation benefits. We've made adjustments to everything, but now it's not, this whole time I think we had a fair compensation, but then when you start hearing what people are leaving to go to and going to be in equal position, it's one thing if it's a promotion,
Mhm.
but it's another thing. when
Yeah,
it's
they're
a
equal, but
more
they're getting a
equal.
huge amount of money.
When I was in private sector, it was always, if someone was leaving, you need to look at the manager. But Kyle is the nicest guy. You can
Right.
never ask for a
That's
better
right.
manager.
Right.
So it's not the
It's
manager.
not management. It's definitely money.
Maybe that upper management, you gotta.
Yeah, you got to that's true.
Well, we do expect people to work.
That's crazy.
What?
We do expect people to do the job they're hired to do, so I will say that. But Lynn's here, she does the exit interviews. Is that one of the concerns you always hear is pay?
Yeah, that's a big thing.
Oh, okay.
Well, I know you need to move along. Kevin, is there anything else that we need to discuss on that one?
I don't think so. Thank you for leaving
Yeah,
that.
we are addressing some of the items that are in our CIP, but we're limited to what we can do with that. But
Well,
any questions you have between now and then, I know you need to move along. Email me, call me, I'll answer those, but ultimately, talk to your finance committee representatives, because they're the ones that are ultimately going to approve this
Yeah,
to go
I got some
forward.
questions about this. I'm emailing. I wanted to be here.
Yes.
the corrective action plan, is that what you got put on hold until the new board comes on play? Is that?
That's correct. Yeah, we're just kind of waiting to see
Yeah.
how that plays out, so.
All right, very
But we'll say
good.
Westminster did just complete a rate cost
Yeah, I
of
saw
service
that.
study.
Good.
They had Raftellus come in.
If you don't mind, just a brief explanation. What did Kevin mean when you'd sent out an email stating to stop it? I mean, what was stop the rate?
No, it was
I didn't understand.
we kinda-
We put
so-
a hold on it, really.
Yeah, so Allison and I, we discussed this, and we discussed it internally, whether we, because we issued these letters, if you will, for lack of a better term, asking the cities to address compliance-related matters on their system, whether it be inflow and infiltration, financial
Okay.
matters, whatever the case may be, and to develop a plan, and that we would oversee that as part of the consent order that we're under with DES. So Alice and I discussed it, and with the direction that's come from the feasibility study with the discussion of possible consolidation, we're like, if there's going to be possible consolidation, why would a city want to put any more money than they have to
Yeah, that's what
into
we-
a system
that's
that
what
they
I was
may?
waiting on that final.
That was what?
So we contacted each of the city administrators and ran this by them, and they, while they said, well, we kind of see it both ways, because, we're on the board and we think maybe we need to continue
Yeah, and
pushing
Kevin's
through with
way
it,
was
but
just-
we also see as the city administrators, we see, so I think everybody agreed, because we were supportive of it, we do, we support it, and it's not like, just like I talked about the treatment plant, it's not like putting this delay in it 2 or 3 months is gonna cause us to be delayed for
okay.
decades, it's,
I understand. Okay,
so
thank you.
we, that's why we just said, we're gonna put it on hold for, maybe till July or August, and then kind of pick it back up.
Our response, David, was thank you.
I didn't respond because I didn't understand. Okay, I'm not following you, Kevin, so okay, thank you.
So that was what that was.
Okay, so we got no action items. And do you want to talk about the environmental regulatory compliance?
I
measures?
spoke about the SSO that we had on Monday, but the other thing that we had a toxicity failure for Q1. We're required to monitor for toxicity each quarter and report that to the state as our permit. And this is what I got back from Kyle, that the failure was the result of high conductivity, or TDS, total dissolved solids, of a sample which was well over the 3,000 micromoles per centimeter. We had an industry that we suspected as being the cause of it because of past sample data that we had received from them, as, with their DMRs for their own.
Can we put a monitoring device on them?
So yeah, well, each of them have, much like we have to self-monitor and report to the state, they self-monitor and report to us on the same exact level. So they have to meet our regulations that are approved by the state.
Right.
So we have updated, to address this, we have updated them. We issued them, and I just signed it earlier this week, a new permit for them to change their monitoring requirements, so that they, instead of them having just simply a monitor and report type of a thing for this, that they actually will have monthly sampling that they perform now.
Are you able to pinpoint where the issue is at for, say, per industry or residential?
This would be for an industrial matter, and based on historical information. And this is an industry that, years and years ago, I don't think there's anybody in this board now that could go back. We installed a diffuser down at the discharge point here to address what I believe was kind of the same type of an issue that we had because of toxicity issues. And then the industry changed their process to where this wasn't needed. Now, the process, from what I understand, which is a refinery, I think it, from what I remember, has started back up again after being mothballed or stopped for years. So that has changed to where now it's become a issue.
So they're back online now doing it again, just like we were before.
As far as whether we have a formal notice of violation from the state over it, I don't know. That'll be forthcoming. We'll find that out as we move forward.
I think I met with that industry that you're talking about on their sewer flows.
Mm-hmm.
It's
So
been a couple weeks ago.
So that, that's the only other matter I have regarding environmental and regulatory compliance. We've addressed the odor complaints, and I don't have any miscellaneous other than I hope that this isn't a checkered flag quite yet.
Yeah.
Well, I will, we'll move on. Let's see, committee members discussion. Okay, I hear done. We'll go on to upcoming meetings. And speaking of that, on June 2nd, I'll be at a conference that week, so. And Josh will be taking my place on board. So that's another reason he's kind of shadowing today. So I'd imagine this, if we got maybe we'll think of Mr. McLean, who is out today, as the chair, just to keep that, for this committee.
Do you want to vote on that today? I mean, well, I guess we can't add it.
Well, wouldn't it be good for him to be here?
You make that decision, or Kevin can make that decision, can he not?
He can, or we can just put it on the board agenda to decide this committee decide that chair.
Yeah.
That'd be fine.
And where you want Josh too, because they want to switch out him with.
We probably can't move on me until our council approves me.
Yeah, but I'm just
Spitballing, yeah.
When do you think that will happen?
June 10th.
Okay, so what I'll do, I'll get it from the minutes as a reminder, but besides sending you that agreement, I'll send you and Mr. Mulder, we've got a draft, like a template for resolution.
Okay.
And that could be what you guys use.
Okay.
And, because we will need to get a copy of that back.
Sure.
So I'll send that out to you guys as well for that.
Okay.
Well, I hate you're not gonna be here for your last official meeting.
I'm not that sorry.
Well, how can we do a formal recognition of you?
You don't need to.
Send him a card, send him an electronic
Still here on the
thank you
18th.
card.
That's right.
Send me an email.
Yeah, show up on the 18th.
June 18th, we'll,
The June 18th?
what if we have breakfast?
Well, I'll be here, but not just that, but June 18th, I won't be a board member,
I'm not a board member and I'm here.
but you will be. It's actually kind of with mixed emotions, joy and happiness. So,
Well, you got any Kleenex,
Listen.
man? Let me go get some Kleenex.
Well, I love what he said. I don't have a computer, I'm retired. I'm like, that sounds nice.
Dab those eyes. We'll put wads of toilet paper under your eyes, catch those tears.
I remember.
Get on your shirt.
I remember when I first started here, Bob, it has been such a pleasure to work with you. You have always just welcomed me and anything that I've ever needed, you've always been there for me. And I just want to know, I want you to know from the bottom of my heart, I really appreciate you.
yeah.
I tell you what, I almost wore shorts today. I wish I had. It's
Well, we've already talked about the odor complaint.
No, I mean, I'm being honest though. I mean, he has really helped me. He has really
Yeah.
Well, Larry, let me let you know this is pretty good. The one evening that you called is around 7 o'clock, whatever. I was in the car, and my lovely bride was sitting there, and you know that discussion. And, and so when we hung up, I said, "See there, sugar, I ain't the only one."
There you go. I mean, to be in the sewer business, there's got to be something wrong with you.
Well,
anyway,
just
you know.
the utilities is
It's just utilities, it's just a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Just a mixed bag.
Yeah.
But anyway, hey, like I say, seriously though, in all seriousness, thank you so much for all the kind words you've given me and all the uplifted conversations, because it has really helped. And you've been a blessing. You
Maybe
really
one of these
have.
days you'll say that about me too. You know?
Well, I'm waiting for you to leave.
It won't be long, apparently, you know.
Well, to that, Chris, it's been an honor and a pleasure to work with you and Lynn and the rest of your staff out here.
All right.
You know, it's been good. Been a good run.
Do you want me to bring checks to your house to sign?
It'd be a negatory.
All right, I'll make a motion with you.
Absolutely.
Do I hear a second?
Got a second.
All four stand up and get out of here.